But what about the struggles of living alone? Welcome in, I'm Kimberly. This is Pretty Over 50, where we talk everything beauty, fitness, and lifestyle for the over 50 and over 60 woman. A couple of weeks ago, actually it's been several weeks now, I did a video. I think it was 4 tips for living alone over 50 and loving it. Because I've been living alone, for quite some time now, more than a decade, and I really do love my life. And I thought that I would put together what I thought were the tips and tricks that I had implemented into my own life in order to really enjoy life alone. Now, when I say life alone, that doesn't mean like I'm by myself all the time. I have a ton of friends and I do a lot of things. But in that video, I talked about how I just work on the day-to-day tasks of living in a home alone and how I manage all of that. If you didn't see that video and you're interested, it might be helpful before you watch this one. I'll go ahead and have it listed in the description box down below. Well, long story short, it was a popular video and a lot of you watched it. And when a lot of people watch a video, there's always questions in the comment section. So I thought I would address those questions today. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you leave and make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And if you want all the good stuff for us older, more mature gals, you might want to sign up for my Sunday morning email newsletter. The link is in the description box down below. Every Sunday morning, I send out a very short, very sweet, very free email newsletter featuring all the cool things I found throughout the week, whether it's a great recipe or a fabulous sale you might have missed or a good piece of information. Whatever I would share with you if we were out together having coffee, that's what goes in the Sunday morning email newsletter. It's super easy to sign up. You just click the link in the description box down below. Super free, super fun. I think you're going to love it. As I mentioned, I did a video on living alone and the things that I have implemented in my life that I think have made my life move along really smoothly. But there were some questions and some people that kind of have the yeah buts. You know that, oh, great for you, yeah, but in my life. So I thought I would just share some stories today, share my experiences, and maybe it might be helpful for 1 or 2 of you. One of the first questions was, and this one kind of cracked me up because I've experienced it recently. What do you do if you have to move something really heavy? Well, I asked someone to help me. It's that simple. I asked one of my girlfriends who's fit, not the ones that don't want to work out, the ones that work out. If it's something heavy or something awkward, that sort of thing, I just ask for help. And I'm not a person that's comfortable asking for help, so it's a skill that I've had to learn. But what I have found, and of course it makes perfect sense, humans love to help. So whoever you're asking for help is tickled because then they get to be useful and humans like that. So don't be afraid to ask for help. I got over it and it's a great thing now. Another concern that came up was if you're living alone and you have a medical emergency, now what? And a lot of people expressed a fear about living alone in case that happened. And I understand that. I really do. And that's one of the reasons that I spend so much time, focus, and energy on taking care of my health, because I don't want to go into my later years not being strong, not being fit, not being energetic, not being flexible, not being able to really do the day-to-day tasks that are so important to me. So I spend a lot of time on my health. I work out almost daily. I have a very, very clean diet. I have a very, very full supplement routine, and I just do a lot to support my health. As far as having an incident at home alone, I don't really worry about it. And I'll tell you why. Worrying is not going to help me. What's going to help is keeping myself as healthy and fit as possible. And I'm very careful. In other words, I don't get up on a ladder by myself in my house. That would be silly. I would invite a girlfriend over and say, I've got to get up on a ladder and do something on a high shelf. Can you stop by a little early before lunch on Thursday and just keep an eye on me while I do that? So I am careful with the things that I do because I know I want to keep my body in the best shape possible. So as far as being alone and having a medical emergency, there's really nothing I can do about it. In other words, worrying is not going to help it. I do have a cell phone in my house. I do have friends and neighbors that would miss me if I didn't show up. So that is something that I've just put on the side and done what I can to keep myself as healthy as possible. Now I want to move on to what was one of the biggest issues and share some stories with you that might just spark a little bit of creativity for you or someone that you know. And even if it helps one person, I think it will really, really be worth it. The issue that kept coming up was, yeah, that's great for you, but if you don't have lots of money, you can't do that kind of thing. And you know what? I kind of had to laugh at that because I don't have lots of money. I never have. I worked as an illustrator for quite a number of years. That was my career, an illustrator. I drew pictures for companies. And you know what? I am sure there are some wealthy illustrators on the planet. I have never met one. I really haven't. Illustration is not exactly a career that you go into because you're looking to make a lot of money. So have I had a lot of money in my life? No. Have I done okay? Yeah, I've done okay. Now I want to share a story with you that might help you overcome some perceived obstacles that you might have around money. Several years ago, it's been about 8 or 9 years now, I had been in an industry for a long time as an illustrator. I was in the gift and paper products industry as an illustrator. Well, that whole career fell apart in 2008 with the housing crash. I mean, the industry just, the bottom fell out. And any income that was fairly consistent from that career really dried up. And it wasn't coming back. And it still hasn't come back. So I kind of bounced around for a while doing different things because where I had earned my living for a long, long time really no longer existed. Well, I finally landed on an idea for a business. And one of the things I can say about myself, and this is helpful for you probably, is that I have always worked for myself. I had a job with E.F. Hutton as a stockbroker. I know that sounds really weird, in my 20s, but that pretty much was the last time I worked for a company. After that, I always owned my own business or had some kind of something sort of gig that I was doing where I was the boss and I was in charge. So I had come up with this new business idea after my career had ended in the gift and paper products industry. And I was putting it all together, kind of putting the business plan together and thinking it through. And what I realized was I was going to be really, really poor for a long time because when you start a new business, it's very rare that the income starts pouring in. You have to establish a business first and build out your contact list and get a funnel and the whole thing. So I was looking at this thinking, yeah, I really, really want to do this business, but gosh, I'm going to be really poor for a long, long time. And I'm not talking just have to tighten the purse strings. I mean, really poor. I was going to be living on very little income. Well, right about this time, and you might remember this was about 8 or 9 years ago, I had been doing a lot of research about retiring in other countries. Remember that whole kind of fad where people were talking about where you can live on Social Security in another country where in the US you couldn't do it. So there were these magazines that were really talking about different places that you could live on your Social Security and do well. And it was sort of just everybody was talking about it. I had a girlfriend looking at it. We shared stories about it, and I had done a lot of research on it. So these two things happened at the same time. I decided I wanted to start this new business and that I was going to be poor for a while. And I also had researched where you can live outside of the US for a lot less money. Well, while I was putting together the business plan, I thought, how am I going to afford to live while I'm building this business? And then I remembered that I had known that you could live in other countries for a lot cheaper. And the decision that I made is that I was going to build the business while I was traveling outside of the US. And that became what I did. And everyone says, oh my gosh, you traveled for a whole year? You must really have a lot of money. No. Actually, I traveled outside of the country for a whole year because I was building a business and living on very, very little income. The business I was doing was as an illustrator. It was just in a different arena and everything was done online. You know, illustrators now, some of them do their illustration on the computer. I did not. I do handwork and then I would scan the images, upload them onto my computer and send them off that way. So what I decided to do is that I was going to travel outside of the country, particularly in Mexico and South America, while I was building this business. And that's that's exactly what I did. What I knew from my research is that I could get a nice place to live, like a 2-bedroom apartment, for $400 or $500 a month. Where can you do that in the US? You can't. And once I launched on my trip, I was living on less than probably $1,200, maybe less than $1,000 a month, because between my rent, which was around $400 to $500, and I was renting Airbnbs. Sometimes I would rent an apartment directly from an owner. It just kind of depended on the circumstances. So my rent was $400 or $500 a month. My food was maybe $200 a month. Well, I didn't have a car because I'd sold my car before I left the country. I'd sold everything. I had a box of documents left at home with my daughter, and that was it. So here I was traveling in other countries with just a carry-on suitcase and a backpack. I had everything I needed plus what I needed to build my business, and off I went. And the countries that I chose to live in, Mexico and Ecuador, are very, very affordable. And I was able to live wonderfully on less than probably $1,000 a month and do everything I wanted to do. Now, food in other countries, particularly the countries that I went to, is very, very inexpensive. And I would go out to lunch and dinner with the friends that I met when I was traveling and be able to afford that. Lunch would maybe be $3 or $4. Dinner would maybe be $10 or $12. It really is so much more affordable in some of these countries. Now, you might be saying, well, what about entertainment? In other countries, particularly the ones that I visited, it's not like the US where you have to spend a couple $100 to go out in the evening. A lot of these towns I was in had plazas, and that's where everybody would go in the evening, go walk around the plaza, maybe get an ice cream or a little goodie or a coffee or something, visit with your friends. Even if you wanted to go to a concert, for instance, when I was living in Ecuador, the concerts were $5 or $7 for a ticket, not $50 or $60. So everything about the lifestyle was so much more affordable. What I would do is I would just run my life like I would have ran it back home in the US. I got up in the morning, had my coffee, I would work for several hours, and then go out and enjoy the day, meet my friends, do something in the community, and just really have a nice life. The point I want to make is, regardless of what life throws us, and in this case, I was thrown a very, very low income for several months, whatever life throws at us, in my mind, it's just an opportunity to get creative. What can we do? What creative solution can we come up with to address that problem? Let me give you another example. I had a girlfriend, this was several years back, and she had been living with her boyfriend, and it was an unexpected breakup that happened, and she had to move because she was living in his house. Well, because it was so unexpected, she didn't know where she wanted to go or what she wanted to do. She had plenty of money because she owned her own business. She was doing fine, but she didn't want to make a decision that was going to last a long time because she wasn't sure what she wanted to do. So there's the problem. Her solution is that she decided to house sit for several months. And that's what she did. She started with one couple that we knew that was going to be traveling for a couple of weeks, and she stayed at their house, took care of the plants, took care of the house, that sort of thing, and then moved on to the next house. And by golly, that gal did it for several months until she decided where she wanted to live, whether she wanted to buy a house or move into an apartment. It gave her breathing room to be able to make a decision that was going to work for her. In my mind, a problem is just a creative solution in the making, and I always like to try to find creative solutions. So at that point in my life, when I didn't have much of an income and I needed time to be able to build up the business and build my income back up, traveling outside the country, I lived in Mexico, I lived in Tulum for about 4 months. Then I went down to Ecuador and was there about 6 months. I had a great time in Ecuador. And then I came back up to Mexico, lived in San Miguel de Allende for about 5 months. Then I headed up to the US. I lived in San Antonio, just really quickly stopped in, and finally landed in Montana. So I just chose an alternative lifestyle while I was poor in order to give myself some breathing room to build that business. But here's the funny punchline of that whole story. You know, that business that I was building, that I traveled outside of the country so I could afford to build the business, it never panned out. It really didn't. And I finally just ended up shuttering it after a couple of years. It never really went anywhere. So I look back now and I think, oh my gosh, I thought I was traveling outside of the country in order to build that business, but actually that business gave me the permission to travel outside the country for over a year. And I had a fabulous time. I met so many interesting people. I had so much fun, and I saw so many things and did so many things that I would not have done otherwise. So I am extremely grateful, first of all, that I had that challenge where I had to come up with a solution for. I took the leap and I did it. It really was quite a fun time. I want to give you another story now, and this might inspire you as well. There was a time about 10, 12 years ago, I was living up in Lake Tahoe on the North Shore in a town called Incline Village. Incline is very snowy during the winter, and I am okay with snow. I do like to snowshoe, but it's not as though I'm a skier and I want to get out on the slopes all the time. So winter for me was really kind of this long haul of slugging through snow and driving in snow, which I don't care for. And this one year I thought, you know what? I really want to do something other than live in the snow. So I sat down and I thought, where can I go? And I landed on Florence, Italy. Yes, Florence, Italy. I thought I could go to Florence in February and March when it's the real slow season and get out of the snow for a couple of months. By the time I come home, it'll almost be snow melt time. Things will be warming up, and before I know it, it's going to be summer and I'm going to be hiking and kayaking and having a great time. So that's what I decided to do. Now you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, Florence for 2 months? Where did you get that kind of money? Well, you know what? That entire trip, and I'm talking 2 months in Florence, cost me a grand total of $2,400. I'm not kidding you one little bit. $2,400 is what that trip for 2 months in Italy cost me. And I had a fabulous apartment. It was a gorgeous full apartment with kitchen and a big bathroom and huge windows. It was just stunningly beautiful, a half a block from the Duomo. So I would go to sleep at night to the bells of the Duomo. I mean, it was absolutely a magical trip. How did I do it? Here's what I did. First of all, I knew I was going to be traveling to Florence during their slow season. That time of the year in Florence, it's kind of overcast and a little drizzly, but it's in the 60s. I had been living in Lake Tahoe in the snow. The 60s seemed like bathing suit weather to me, so I was fine with it. What I did is I hopped on Airbnb. I found about 4 or 5 apartments that I thought fit the bill for me. And I messaged each owner and I said, I'm coming to Florence for 2 months. Can you give me a discount if I rent for 2 months during the slow season? Now, what I knew is that they most likely were not going to have any tenants during that time. So that Airbnb was going to be sitting vacant. And what I was doing is offering them the opportunity to rent it at a very discounted rate and at least make a little bit of money instead of make no money at all. So 2 of the landlords took me up on it, and I selected one of the landlords. And I had that beautiful apartment for $800 a month. Right down the street from the Duomo. So that was $1,600. Now, in that $2,400, I don't count all the things I would have paid for at home. In other words, I still was going to eat at home. I still was going to do stuff at home. I still was going to, drive a car and that sort of thing. However, when I was in Florence, I didn't drive a car. I just mostly walked or took trains. So what I counted in that $2,400 is my additional rent that I paid for the apartment in Florence, right down the street from the Duomo, plus my airfare, plus any additional travel I did. Like I would go away for a couple of days to this town or this town and do that. So it was train fare and the additional Airbnb fees. The whole thing ended up costing me an additional $2,400 that I spent above and beyond what I would have spent at home. But that really wasn't even the $2,400, because what I did is I Airbnb'd my place out to a skier who lived not too far from Tahoe. Tahoe, would come up on the weekends to ski. So he got to stay in my place and I got the income from that. And then he got to ski and I got to be out of the snow. So the whole thing worked beautifully. The point that I'm making is that there are lots and lots and lots of creative solutions for whatever happens to us in life. And if finances are an issue, what creative solutions can you come up with that will help ease that for you, or maybe even create a fun alternative life that you never envisioned before? So those are my stories about little bitty challenges or struggles. You might want to call them struggles of living alone over 50. To be honest with you, I have not had anything that I could say, oh my gosh, that just took me out of the game, or oh my gosh, that was just so horrible. I just haven't. Everything that has come along, particularly if it was a challenge, I tried to come up with a creative solution that was going to be fun for me, that was going to serve me, and was going to turn kind of a sticky situation into something that was fun and enjoyable. So that's just how I did it, and I hope this was helpful for you. I want to thank you so much for joining me for the struggles or lack of struggles living alone over 50. I hope you found this fun, useful, and helpful. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. You guys know it just tickles me when you take a few minutes out of your day to spend it with me. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. Again, I'm Kimberly. This is Pretty Over 50, where we talk everything beauty, fitness, and lifestyle for the over 50 and over 60 woman. Make it a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.